Welcome everyone to Growth Sessions, where we interview agency leaders in retail media. Today we have a very special team of guests and a guest host as well. We have Gemma Spence, Chief Commerce Officer at OMG Transact. Gemma, thanks for coming. And we also have a very special guest host here today, Donna Sharp, Managing Director of Medialink. Donna, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, Adam.
I'd love to start with Gemma. Gemma, what is OMG Transact and what does a Chief Commerce Officer do at a large holding company like OMG?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having us, Adam, and really excited about the discussion that we're going to be having today. OMG Transact is, the way I describe it is it's an e-commerce consultancy. E-commerce has become very in the moment. It's been very relevant for all consumers, given what's happened over the last 24 months. But it's also highly relevant to advertisers and to brands. And OMG Transact is all about helping our clients drive visibility and really own the digital shelf through from consideration all the way through to the point of delivery and purchase within the commerce value chain. So we work with a whole range of clients to, first of all, being part of a large holding group and media agency, we first start by understanding actually their core customer and consumers' buying behavior and actually what are the core triggers for convenience and choice, and actually are there changes that consumer and that customer are making to their purchase planning but also purchase cycle. And then we use that through the entire planning process, from the type of routes to market, whether it's direct or indeed indirect channels such as Amazon and grocery.com, through into the type of product. So is it going to be individual products or is it going to be bulk buy? And what type of products are most appealing to the customer? And then right the way through into the content and the demand gen. So where are the products listed and also advertised in order to drive the right demand and stickiness through into the add to cart and purchase. So it's been a bit of a labor of love over the last 4 to 5 years. And we now have about 130 commerce experts across 26 markets that are really leading many different clients through a whole range of challenges and opportunities as to how to orientate, organize, and capitalize on the opportunities around commerce. It's been a fantastic experience. So for the second part, what does a Chief Commerce Officer do? Well, I would say my days are never quite the same. Some days you're talking to exec leadership within a client who are going through commerce transformation and really working out actually where should commerce sit? Is it sales? Is it marketing? Should it be direct line up to CEO? What type of organizational structure or model is right, through into the kind of day-to-day hustle of hitting targets and delivering exceptional plans for clients through everything from retail media to content and visibility strategies. So no day is the same and no client is the same as well. So really varied and a real variety of work every other day.
And you mentioned this has been a labor of love for the past 4 or 5 years. What was the impetus behind starting this labor of love? How did Omnicom and specifically you decide we needed to make a bet on this? This is going to be big. What was that inception moment and how did you know that was validated?
So I think like all businesses, it's first of all about building a proof of concept or like a kind of minimum viable prototype. With one of our great clients, Unilever, we're working together and partnering with them in developing some really innovative retail search and retail media strategies. And we delivered some fantastic work together in partnership with the global media teams. And, it was really born out of being able to build repeatable models that actually could be lifted and shifted across different industries, different verticals, that actually not only kind of delivered the media KPIs or objectives that were set, but actually helped transform their business. And for me, I think that's the most important thing, actually delivering strategies and actions that help nudge the business forward and help fundamentally the business grow from a market share or from a profitability standpoint. Back 5 years ago or 6 years when I joined Omnicom, there were a small team of us that were working together on building out the commerce offering. And I think the senior leadership within the organization, really started to set up when they could see actually this was something that was scalable, and that actually there was a real demand from the clients for this sort of consulting and advisory type of service. And actually it was sticky, and it was really core to our value proposition within as a media organization, because media organization is all about consumer behaviors, and it's about that understanding of what actually makes the customer tick. What are the type of initiatives and tactics that you can employ that help nudge them in the direction to complete an action, whether that be clicking or indeed purchasing. So actually, it was really hand in glove with what the overall media proposition was, and actually sat really nicely on top as an enhanced and end-to-end service. So I think, like all leaders, they contemplated how does it complement, how does it enhance, but also how does it help drive a cross and upsell, as well as new endeavors into new kind of revenue and routes to market for them. And like all things, there's lots of validation, and then there are lots of business cases that have to be built out. But very fortunately, the in place saw the value, and also I think with a lot of discussions with their key client stakeholders, they were getting a lot of the similar sentiments from senior clients that actually e-commerce was going to be a big thing. And then the pandemic hit, and it surely was, and it was accelerated significantly.
And what got you personally excited initially to join and lead these efforts?
I've never done the same. So I've never done the same job twice, and every job that I've done since being on my graduate scheme was always the first time that the company had set it up. So the way I describe myself is I'm an entrepreneur, so like an entrepreneur on the inside. And the idea of being able to actually build a new offering, looking at the minimum viable products, looking at the tech partners such as yourself, and then building out actually what would be the right offering that helps clients actually grow. And I think if I answer your question really like definitively and directly, I love helping clients grow. I like seeing that they are transforming and they are being able to achieve their ambition. So for me, when we're able to do that and able to have a successful partnership with a client, that gets my juices flowing.
And so you recognize there was a scalable model. There are similar playbooks for success. Lots of clients are interested in this. And Transact is quickly becoming a global organization within Omnicom, right? I think when we spoke, you mentioned there's almost 140 people spread across 25 markets, and that's not just media. How do you find the right people from a media agency now moving into a commerce arm within a media agency? Like, how do you find people that want to move beyond just media and think about servicing clients in a commerce perspective? And is it a different sort of team member that you're bringing onto this team? Or is it just retraining folks that have a media background into thinking like a commerce person?
I think that is a really great question. And it's one that's highly relevant, certainly to our business, because we are a people-based business, right? Like our service is built on having exceptional talent and having really smart people that help our clients figure out problems and help them grow. So I think there's not just one answer to this. There's multiple answers, and it's almost like peeling back the layers on an onion to get to the heart of it. The way that we look at it is there's from a pure consulting and advisory standpoint, we really need to have talent that understands the end-to-end value chain of commerce, and also have that value network in place that allows them to pivot very quickly based on clients' needs. So I suppose a practical example would be having someone with that D2C expertise. So they understand everything from how the back end and the tech stack works, whether that is the integration of manufacturing center or merchant feeds, etc., but also they understand the need for UX and CRO and what type of tactics can be put in place to drive the right kind of demand generation to the platforms, and what it really takes to create a highly profitable D2C platform. So you're always going to have that kind of, let's say, subject matter expertise required. And as much as possible, what we try to do is bring in commerce experts who typically are client background, consulting background, who have that hands-on experience of dealing with the platforms, but also have the cross-category and the multi-market experience depending on the needs. But then at the same time, you're going to need to have generalists, because there's going to be some requirement of being able to plan a broader go-to-market strategy for a client, where you're going to have to balance the volume and then the precision and the scale required across the different routes to market, and then the assortments based on the demand from the target customer and consumer. So I think that for the way we've done it is almost like when you build a football team, right? Like you have your goalkeeper who's tall and big and quite dynamic and able to obviously defend and save the goals. But then you've also got the right defense, you've got the right kind of attackers in place. So I think it's been a bit of a jigsaw puzzle and in building out the right skills and the right talent in place. And that has been absolutely an acquisition strategy. So to find right talent. But then equally, and this is where I talk about the kind of peeling back the layers on the onion, is that it's also about taking the organization on a journey. And I want to really labor this point, because no man is an island and no company is can be successful through one or a pocket of people's kind of endeavors. Commerce is truly end to end, and actually everyone, I firmly believe, everyone within a network agency or a network organization needs to have some understanding about how commerce impacts their area of subject matter expertise. And actually, they need to have enough knowledge to appease clients' needs, whether that is to do with an Amazon strategy or the right level of investment planning or attribution modeling. They need to understand actually the impact and the requirement from e-commerce through a commerce lens. So we within Omnicom Media Group, and certainly with my hat on for PhD worldwide, we've been building a really comprehensive competency framework that takes effectively generalist or someone who has a subject matter expertise outside of commerce or commerce advisory, and then takes them on the kind of journey so that they can learn D2C, marketplace, on-demand, investment planning, the areas around attribution in a way that really enhances their core subject matter expertise. But then equally, it lays the foundations, the proficiency, the development, and the expertise out so that actually a subject matter expert in commerce have the ability to do continual personal and professional development, so that they also have a path to a greater understanding. So for me, it's a three-pronged approach. You need to bring talent in who have that kind of key area of focus, take the company on this kind of transformation program and agenda through subject matter expertise across varying of subjects, and then also a broader transformation program for the wider business, so that everyone has a broader understanding of commerce and how it's applied to meet and exceed clients' needs.
And the fun thing is it's ever evolving. These 6 months are very different. What's going to happen in the next 6 months? You spoke about this team and that you're forming, and it's almost like a football club on the other side. And you have these client teams that are ever changing as well. And Donna, Medialink talks to tons of brands and tons of potential clients for an agency. They're all asking questions around retail media and where they should sit and how they should form teams internally. I'd love to know at a high level how you and Medialink begin to advise clients in this and how the clients can put themselves in the best position to be as successful as possible with their agency partners.
Absolutely, Adam. And I love just echoing what Gemma was talking about, the fact that you're recognizing that the agency is going on a very similar transformation as your clients, because the clients are having the same discussions around when we are doing marketing transformation journeys. You don't just pick up and move in an entirely new group of people and expect them to succeed. And many of the CEOs that we work for say, hey, we're not in the business of ending jobs and ending careers. We're here to actually help build. And despite the fact that people move around a lot longer these days, a lot of these major CPG companies, if you look at some of the most successful leaders in e-commerce, they have come from decades of experience on traditional shopper marketing, on customer teams, et cetera. And I think, Gemma, what you're both doing from an internal standpoint is a nice reflection of the transformation that your clients are going through. And I know at Medialink, we have been really excited to see that type of transformation happening at agencies like Omnicom, because some of the movement in the past few years leading up to the pandemic, we knew that e-commerce was important to a lot of clients, but it was in obviously pockets how big things were going to scale. And if I'm a holding company, I invest in scale. And Gemma, you spoke a little bit about that. And so the fact that I think some of the groups like Omnicom so quickly made this decision to invest and realize that it was going to be that combination of bringing outside in and then taking those passionate, excited individuals who had a lot of building blocks to be able to convert them is actually going to be very timely and beneficial. Because what we've been seeing, especially in the past year, is that the majority of e-commerce structures tended to be bifurcated in CPG organizations. So they tended to sit under sales, and then they got into this kind of squirrely, uncomfortable discussion about the retail media portion of it. But many in the sales community would say that's a very small portion of what is actually commerce. And on the marketing side would actually say that's a huge impact, particularly when there's no such thing as a physical shelf. Like, how else are you going to get in front of consumers? And so in this past year, we have been doing significant amounts of organizational transformation around how do you start bringing those skill sets and that accountability together. And that's why clients need partners who understand that end-to-end full consumer journey that Gemma is talking about. Because as you start to take folks who have been on customer teams and really only focused on hitting the specific numbers that Amazon or Walmart or whoever your customer is, and all of a sudden you're now moving into more of a marketing role where you need to do demand generation, which is not quite as linear to an individual channel. It gets a lot more complicated and a lot more fun for those of us who I think have been in media for a long time.
Is there an ideal model, Donna, or is every brand different? Is there an ideal way to approach this?
Well, Adam, we wouldn't make any money if there was one model and I just told you on the phone. But I will say we have seen a lot more, like early on, if you look like 5 years back, some of the companies who had truly invested in early e-commerce, the standalone team was very popular. So years and years and years ago, you heard about Pampers creating a tiger team that had all of the capabilities they needed to succeed in e-commerce that included everything from supply chain to marketing to pricing, et cetera. That obviously worked for very small pockets and is why you saw like these much smaller emerging D2C businesses where literally there were only so many people within a company were able to scale at such a high pace. But that's obviously not sustainable when you look at some of these major organizations that are scaled portfolios by design. There is a benefit to that. And so that's where we're starting to see a lot more of collaboration, where the previous 2 years ago, we would have said at least 80% of e-commerce, including retail media, sat under a sales reporting organization. That's starting to be much more of a blended accountability. And again, a lot of it has to do with the aptitude and the capabilities of a marketing leadership team. And many times, 75% of the talent who actually executes marketing is sitting within agencies. it's not sitting within a client's walls. It is the agency partners. It is that extended ecosystem and team. And so to be able to go in and have a reasonable conversation with the sales team about why, if retail media and all media are looked at together, would be a benefit to driving total demand and total conversion for the business, you have to also be able to speak in some of the same language. And so we started to see a lot of this earlier kind of education happening right at the pre-2020 and the beginning of 2020, and then a rapid fire, because there were as the money goes, a lot of people start to realize like, hey, where is this coming from? Which budget is actually going to shift. And so that's when all of a sudden, if I'm the CMO, I care a lot more. So I think that the ideal model right now is still shared accountability, because what we found is to the points of an understanding of the customer relationship and the channel relationship. That is the same way understanding media and how media operates. Sales customers have retailers have a very different structure and approach, and what they value is very different. And so I think you still have to have that blend, but a lot of it is just time, right? Because you just need people who've had experience on both sides. And I think, Gemma, you've even had some clients who have gone through this, who had drastic change in the past year because of the need to flip so quickly to aggressive e-commerce sales when restaurants and bars are closing. I mean, there are companies that pivoted significant amounts of their staff from brick and mortar or on-premise to all of a sudden learning e-commerce. And so it's just a matter of time that more people, I think, are getting educated on both sides of the funnel.
Gemma, what successes have you seen from clients? What are the typical organizational design models on the client side? And you mentioned that you create almost subject matter experts within Omnicom. How do you complement the client side organization with those subject matter experts?
So I think, as Donna said, every client is different, right? Like every single client, even if you're looking within the CPG world and you look at two very similar businesses, the way that they've acquired new companies, the way that they have organically grown their footprint, their geographies, etc. So you're never going to be able to create a carbon copy, and one structure is not going to be able to be lifted and shifted into another organization perfectly. Again, echoing what Donna mentioned earlier, I think back 2 to 3 years ago, I think we saw a lot of client organizations using the sidecar model. So that high incubation, the ability to be agile, to be nimble, fail smartly, fail fast, and control all of the different aspects that are required to be successful within e-commerce. Now, given the focus and the reliance on e-commerce, not only to be 6, 7, 10% of the NSVs and the sales for an organization, now moving into being, in some cases, a quarter, even a half of overall sales for organizations within, whether that be consumer electronics or apparel, it then gives the e-commerce business or e-commerce teams a much greater share of the pie and more say within the organization as a whole. So actually what we're seeing more and more is that more of an integrated model is required, and we're seeing a lot of our clients pivoting now into moving from that kind of sidecar into sales, or even in some cases under marketing leadership. I think that there's never going to be one set model that works, because some of our clients are highly decentralized, some are highly centralized. They are certainly shifting to more of that integrated view, given the reliance and the focus and the share in which e-commerce represents within their business.
Can you give some examples of clients that have gone through this transformation over the past couple of years and how Omnicom has been able to support them and help them grow?
Sure. So I think a great example is one of our primary clients, Diageo. You mentioned earlier with bars and restaurants being hit heavily within the pandemic. I think the beer, wine and spirits category was probably one of the categories that was most affected during the pandemic. And I would say, certainly from my close relationship with the Diageo teams, they pivoted very quickly, They had a number of really kind of game-changing programs, such as one being called On the Bar, that was put in place in order to support a lot of their kind of on-trade business and help really kind of pivot the business into the e-commerce space. And everything from their endeavors around their centers of excellence into their local markets was absolutely focused on moving the needle rapidly and at pace across the entire organization. And it absolutely worked. They had their recent earning call that talked through their overall performance, which was in light of a very challenging period of time and really exceptional results. And that was due to, I think, a real concerted effort, certainly at the leadership level, but then also down into the different disciplines and subject matter experts across all aspects of the value chain that I talked about earlier, but also in step with the local markets where e-commerce is transacted day in, day out.
And for many people in the US, they may not know you can actually get alcohol on Amazon in several European markets, which is a big deal. I think alcohol sales exist on Amazon in the UK, Germany, and Italy. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gemma.
Like all Amazon endeavors, they are expanding rapidly. So you are correct. There's a number of markets, I think 4 that are trading right now for beer, wine, and spirits. However, they are setting up a number of other markets to go live with either later this year or early next year. So yes, in Europe, it's got slightly different legislation in place. So it is much more easy to purchase alcohol via Amazon and other kind of grocery and on-demand platforms.
And to unbundle that, if that is the case, when everything goes online, I need to completely reorient my supply chain from going to brick and mortar retailers and bars and restaurants to a large aggregator of demand like Amazon. And then I need to make new listings and product pages and brand stores for some of these products that weren't on Amazon before because I was focused on brick and mortar retail. So I'm dramatically reallocating media spend from offline traffic, maybe even some out of home traffic, sales to brick and mortar retail, and primarily sending that to Amazon, right? Am I nailing this one, Gemma? It sounds like it was a fun client.
Do you know what? They're a remarkable business full of really remarkable people, and it has been a partnership in the truest of senses. So it was fast and furious, lots of things to do. Yes, Amazon is important, but it's not the be all and end all. So it's also about, and I always go back to where, you want to fish where the fish are, right? Like you want to be present and visible where your core customer is shopping. So with that in mind, building out a kind of inside out strategy that looks at actually the consumer orientation, where to play and therefore where to win based on what is going to be most profitable and most sustainable for their business long term. But you're right. I mean, every aspect, whether it's supply chain and actually looking at the right kind of the right supply chain model. So whether that is going to be consignment stock or it's going to be looking at some sort of like Kanban solution or looking at the different types of fulfill solutions in place for not only Amazon but across the space is always going to be tricky for brands. So it makes it a very interesting space for sure.
And you mentioned you need to be where the fish are, and the fish aren't only on Amazon. What are other emerging channels in Europe that you find particularly interesting, and how are you advising brands on activating on those other channels?
Just tying back to the thing that you said earlier, like the pace of change within commerce is absolutely outstanding. Like it's in some ways it's also a little bit scary because you have to keep up to date with it all, right? Like, and so I mean there's a ton of channels, and given that commerce is done, transactions are done locally, and there's so much local nuance, it's often market by market, right? And what I would say is actually a lot of the grocery partners, given the pandemic, given the pivot into e-commerce as a high growth area for them, they have been also restructuring, right? Like they have been building out the right platforms and the right end-to-end operations in place so that they are also competitive with the likes of Amazon and other pure players. So I'd say that is absolutely a growth area. But it's obviously grown given the pandemic and given these new behaviours that have been built through the pandemic by consumers. I think there's still a lot more kind of greenfield space for growth within those channels, and also tapping into the consumer insights that these channels have from a CRM, from a personalization, from a retail media standpoint. So lots of opportunity. And I think we're going to see a merging together of the O2O, the online to offline and offline to online effect within that space. I think also given the real focus of convenience and being able to then tap into the right kind of selection and choice that can be delivered not only today, but within like a 15-minute time slot. So I think that the on-demand platforms are definitely an area for growth, given they're effectively an affiliate network in many respects. So I think that you're going to see a real concerted focus, certainly from a client standpoint, in really tapping into the opportunity of the Uber Eats, the Deliveroos, the Instacarts, because actually there's the ability to start looking at some creative solutions around, pricing elasticity or the right configuration of products that might be coming from various kind of retailers and partners. So I think that that's also going to be a huge growth area. And also what we're seeing is that consumers they're looking for personalization. They're looking for a really curated experience, certainly for the more premium end of their purchases. So I think that actually we're going to see a rise in D2C and an even greater surge within D2C in the merged with social commerce, and some of the really interesting partnerships that we've seen, whether that be Facebook and Shopify, Google and Shopify, and where you're able to start complementing the demand side with a kind of integrated tech stack and order management. So I think it's going to be a very interesting space, and it would be good to also see where things like from a creative standpoint and from more of an experience standpoint, the kind of AI starts tying in even more around the type of relevancy and commercial factors, as well as platforms like or technologies like VR and any form of augmented reality to give people a real sense when they're at their home of the products and services that they're looking to buy.
I think you just described $1 trillion plus opportunity across many different ways of purchasing. And Donna, you chat with a lot of those retailers,
Gemma hit
right?
the nail on the head that it's the same transformation that is happening if you're a manufacturer, if you're an agency looking to provide the services that your clients need. The retailers are going through the same. I mean, we're currently working with a major retail platform on how they optimize their marketing processes, both for themselves and then for their supplier partners, to be significantly more streamlined. And I think some of the areas, Gemma, that you're speaking of that are exciting are also where, dare I say, like Amazon is obviously a powerhouse in terms of a lot of driving conversion in retail media, but some of these newer players are coming up with very different business models, and in many cases are focusing on newer areas of the funnel, like product discovery and trial. And that it becomes interesting because it is that blended question between who do I want to be as a retailer? What is the role of retail media? I know it can help me drive margin, and I know ideally it can help me sell more products, but some of the retailers we're working with are making very different choices between what they want to be as a business. And there's always going to be some of the same basics, which are like, we want to be the best retail partner for our suppliers. We want to prove that we drive incrementality. But at the end of the day, the way that comes to life, for instance, in some of the discovery engine that you've experienced on Instacart in very early stage, the development of their retail media offerings, to even what a Roundel versus a Kroger's 8451 prioritizes in the US. I mean, Carrefour's announcement earlier this year when they talked about coming up with a very formal strategy that was all partner-based was an interesting one, because there are many major retailers who have said Amazon has been so successful and they have built everything. They have built everything and then made things third-party API accessible, so amazing companies like Perpetua can make us work better. But it's been very interesting to see a very public flip from some of the retailers to say, hey, we are not going to try to be a technology business. We're going to try to work with the best technology businesses, and that's actually going to make us easier for you to plug into. So both the transformation on the, yes, needing to provide the right consumer experience, but the advertising experiences have been quite different, which I know, Gemma, has been both a frustration because there's no one size fits all approach to any of these platforms, but also can be somewhat exciting, I think, for things that your team are looking at in terms of like, what is my palette to work with? And it's so much more than just search and targeted display. I'm curious, Gemma, how your team has been looking at, with all of the fragmentation that I know you've shared with us, like how are you thinking about holistic strategies versus channel and customer specific strategies? And we've talked a little bit about the organizational design, which sometimes with clients makes it difficult, because if you've got a team who all they care about is Tesco, it's really hard to talk to them about a holistic strategy. But curious how you guys are tackling that, because obviously when you're doing a lot of your bigger high level consulting and activation work, you have to toe both lines.
Totally. I loved the way that you described that there's not one size fits all. You're absolutely right. Like retail media, is just growing exponentially. Every day when I wake up and I start going through my feeds and I learn something new every single day. There's new technology, there's proliferation of the partnerships as well between the different tech providers, and there's many different opportunities that clients can start capitalizing on. So the way that we typically do this is, and again, there's not one size fits all, because every client has a unique structure. We have different point people depending on the client's orientation. But largely what we do is we would work together with our clients to set the North Star. So what is strategically most important and what are their metrics that matter around that, so that we have a formalized, as it were, like commercial and media and marketing set of KPIs that we are going to be focusing on in order to drive and affect change within the retail media and performance media landscape. Based on that, at a kind of a global or a local market level, we would then run an audit of the different retail media and performance media opportunities in the market. And then, like all great strategies, you're going to prioritize them, right? Because no business can do everything. So what we would do is prioritize based on their total levels of investment, the different channels, and then the different orientations of those channels based on those metrics that matter. And that would then be tied back into their kind of overall investment strategy around whether it's going to be ROAS or ACOS or market share or anything to do with penetration or NSV. So that would then tie back to their kind of their higher order of what they're looking to achieve. And then from that, we would then get into the individual channels. So it's like setting the broader go-to-market around the shopper media and conversion marketing activities. We would then set, okay, actually what's going to be the focus around always on and those areas that we're going to test and fail fast or fail smartly and learn, and then maybe move into being the high priority areas. And then we would then break it down in channel around actually what's going to be the right orientation. Are we going to do DSP? Are we going to do affiliates? Are they going to be kind of the upper funnel, mid or low? And then what are going to be the right tactics for switching and doing the more tactical endeavors around getting consumers to start attaching certain items to their basket. And that it's a continual cycle because, as we've just talked about, it's an ever-changing landscape. So we typically do this on a quarterly basis so that we're able to then keep scanning actually new opportunities, new partners in the market that we can test and put in place with our key clients.
And you've also built out your own proprietary tech. Omnicom has a shelf product that's able to measure all this.
So within Omnicom, I mean, it's been like a 10 to 11 year endeavor where you may have heard of Omni, which is Omnicom's people-based and precision marketing platform that has been built out. Almost everyone in Omnicom has access to it. I think there's about 13,000 active users on a daily basis that do sign on to the platform. And it's also been together with partners, right? Because actually, there's a whole raft of data that's out there. Data is the biggest commodity in the world, and data varies heavily in terms of quality and also the regulation and the orientation market by market. So Omni is built based on a combination of partners and client data so that we're able to look at first, second, and third party and use it to understand actually the drivers of behaviors. So that we can plan really effectively. It is a kind of an end-to-end platform, but within it, what we noticed quite early on over the past couple of years is that actually, whilst it is a superb platform for doing media and comms planning, actually commerce, as we have talked about, is very fragmented, it's siloed, and it has so many considerations from everything from supply chain to the platform and partners. It's highly locally nuanced. So we needed a slightly different operating system that would allow us to gather the insights that and then build the kind of actionable recommendations and put those into place for clients so that we can drive visibility and strong conversion. So yes, we've got a platform, it's called Omnishell, and it follows our proprietary framework. The shelf goes from before the shelf, which is all more about category platform and insight level planning, all the way through into the right type of demand generation tactics that are required in order to bring the customers that are showing the right behaviors and certain motivations around a given purchase. And it allows us to streamline some of these aspects that are required. But as I mentioned, our philosophy is very much around working with partners and I'm a firm believer that certainly within the commerce space, it is so fragmented. It is so locally nuanced, and actually there's so many different aspects to consider that it's near on impossible to do it all brilliantly on your own. And working together with Perpetua and working together with many other partners, we're then able to slot in the right technology that allows us to do the different aspects of the kind of shelf management in a way that is sustainable and that delivers strong visibility and strong conversion, helps our clients really grow at a rate that they're looking to grow within their business.
Then one of the things that we've started to learn is that there's more and more fragmentation and more expertise is required. And because the space is so new, many brands just simply can't hire fast enough to get the level of expertise that they require. And for that reason alone, agencies are becoming more and more important, and agencies are creating these centers of excellence to support their brands while leveraging technology to get the best possible results for the brands. And it seems that's where the happiest marriage tends to sit right now. Well, this has been great. We're wrapping up now, and I'd like to leave with one final thought from both of you. We ask everyone at the end of these podcasts, if you were to give one prediction for the next year in retail media, what would your prediction be? And I'll go with you first, Donna.
I think we already know that the amount of spend in retail media is growing at a huge rate. I think the biggest tipping point is we've been talking a lot about the full funnel of driving demand generation to conversion. It's going to be the flip of that, which I see coming from all of the marketing kind of influence and shared accountability coming into this space will be, how is retail media now being measured, metriced, and ideally is proving itself and therefore driving increased spend around what's the haloed impact to overarching brand, which has been a bit of a gray space these days and something that the broader traditional media players are a little bit nervous about. But I think that's the next frontier that we're going into in terms of both structurally getting the measurement right. A lot of the tools that Gemma's talking about work just as well to look at from conversion out, from exposure on platform to broader brand impact, and not just driving to the immediate ROAS.
And Gemma, you?
I think that retail media has, as Donna mentioned, it's had a 10x, in some cases 20x increase in importance and spend within the kind of the broader landscape. And I think that is going to continue as we come out of the pandemic, just given the changes in consumer behavior. And from what we're seeing, actually, the new behaviors that have now been set for the way that people discover and certainly purchase within many, many different channels, and certainly within grocery and lifestyle.com. I think from my side, I think probably one of the biggest areas that we're going to see really create a greater demand in this space is going to be the ability for brands to start really getting under the skin as to their core customers and how their core shoppers are behaving in these platforms. Whether that is looking at semantic data or looking at transactional data, being able to understand the true behaviors and the true drivers of choice and selection and the path to purchase within the platform. And there's many new opportunities to do this. The clean room environment is an area that is really, I think, underutilized right now. We know that a number of retailers are starting to build out partnerships so that they can start tapping in a more scalable manner to really starting to pull together different data sets and really understand those drivers that they can then perhaps resell on to brands and to network agencies and advertisers. So I think that by those new endeavors setting up and scaling fast, I think that we're going to see an influx of spend within retail media, and not only just across the large conglomerates or multi-market retail players, but actually into the local kind of cash cows, if you will, in the market. The other thing is, I think, is the connection point into the physical store. So we think about retail media very much as the digital kind of media and the digital media that's driving to a digital shelf. But I actually think, and certainly there's a huge amount of new technology providers that are really ramping up and building out partnerships with the in-store, with a number of retailers to start being able to determine the in-store customer journey and use some of those insights and those data points to augment, again, the media and advertising approach for a business. So I think another massive opportunity and an area that's going to be really, I think, a big driver for growth in this area is going to be that augmentation of the O2O that we've seen work so successfully in many of Eastern markets, such as China. So I think that's going to be one to watch too.
That's really exciting. And identity becomes a huge role in that as well. And identity is going through this huge transformation. It's an awesome discussion. Thank you so much, Gemma, for your time. Thank you so much, Donna, for your time. This was great. Thanks again. This is Growth Sessions. Please make sure to subscribe to listen to more episodes on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.